Okay, well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Coffeyville Community College for tonight's Raven Talk. I'm Dr. Marlon Thornburg, the president here at the college, and tonight we have with us Oliver Littlecook Jr., and he is from Ponca City, Oklahoma. So the format for Raven Talk, for those that have not seen one of our Raven Talk events before, is basically a conversation to visit with special guests about different topics, and then give an opportunity. We'll ask some questions here, and then give an opportunity for the audience to ask questions of our distinguished guests tonight. And so our topic tonight is focused on the movie Killers of the Flower Moon. This was released in October of 2023, and it's based off of a 2017 book of the same title. And it was based in 1920s Oklahoma. And it's focused on the murders of the members of the Osage Nation after oil was discovered on the tribal land. These are some of the accolades from this movie, just to kind of give you a quick rundown on it. It grossed over $158 million worldwide. It received critical acclaim for Martin Scorsese's direction, screenplay, production values, editing, cinematography, the musical score, which is what we're going to focus on tonight, and cast performances. It won Best Film at the National Board of Review and was named one of the top 10 films of 2023 by the American Film Institute. It was also nominated for 10 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, 7 Golden Globe Awards, including Best Motion Picture in a Drama, 9 British Academy Film Awards, including Best Film, and 3 SAG Awards. And get the page turned over here. And also for her performance in the movie, Lily Gladstone won the Golden Globe and Screen Actor Guild Award for Best Actress, as well as earned a nomination at the Academy Awards. So our distinguished guest tonight is, as I mentioned before, Oliver Littlecook Jr., and he served as the Osage and the Ponca music consultant for this film. So welcome, Mr. Littlecook. Good to have you here.
Check.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
And everybody hearing okay?
Me?
All right.
Okay.
So to get started, we'll just have you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what brought you here tonight.
Well, thank you. I am Ponca and Osage tribes. I reside in Ponca City, Oklahoma. And currently I am an Osage language teacher. So I teach the Osage language. And I've been working for the Osage Nation going close to 10 years now. Beforehand, I worked for the Osage casinos for a number of years. Still going to school, working towards a bachelor's, Native American Indian Studies. And as far as the film goes, it was a great experience. But as far as my background, that's what I wanted to say about that right now.
Okay. Excellent. So how did you become involved in the making of this film and being a consultant for the musical?
One of my uncles came to me, told me he wanted to invite me down, and he said there were some people from New York. During this time, around the community, a lot of people were saying that they were going to make a movie about the book that came out that David wrote. And he told me this. He said there's some people coming over and they want to talk about this movie. And they're wanting some music, some of our indigenous music into the film. So he said, nephew, I think you need to come over and listen to what these people have to say. Because he told me, he said, you and your family, you all come from a long line of singers, and that you need to come over. And so anyway, I did. We went over there, we met, and her name was Marianne, and she was a consultant of Martin Scorsese, and she kind of ran it down to us, gave us the gist of what they were wanting to do at the time. and kind of a basic introduction of what they wanted as far as music. Had a lot of questions concerning the cultural understanding of the music, not wanting to disrespect any of the music. And so we worked it out. There was, like I said, a lot of questions that was asked. And so we talked, kind of roundtabled, and we met a number of times after that.
Good.
That's how I got involved with the movie, and it kind of just went from there. But
right. So what did you learn through the process of developing a motion picture? How long of a time were you involved from start to finish?
Oh, I was involved from start to finish. Like I said, with the music was kind of my foot in the door, if you will. And from there, I'll tell you a little story if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
During the process when we were visiting with Marianne, and I forget a lot of the other ladies and people's names, when they were asking, we were talking about the songs and what they were giving me examples of what they were wanting as far as, and this was all new to me, the terms and everything as well. They would talk about scoring. I never heard what scoring was, as far as the music of the film. So providing the kind of the atmosphere or the theme of the scene, that whatever is going to transpire, take place. So it kind of builds the feeling, the emotion of the scene. So this is what their questions were. They were asking, and one of the questions they asked was, "Do you all have if I can remember how they phrased this, it was something along the lines of a morning war party song." And I like to have fun with people too, so I'm like, explain this to me. What is a war party morning song? So they explained the scene of what happened was one of the chiefs of the tribe was killed, and a lot of the people were standing around the body of this dead chief and crying and wailing. And after that, this war party was formed and went to go taking revenge to kill the person that killed him, which was the main character in the film, which Robert De Niro played, Bill Hale. And so I was telling him, I said, yeah, so we have all types of songs. Our people, we made songs for every occasion. And so I told him, I said, well, I have a question. I said, is that going to take place, in this film? And I was like, well, we don't know. We're thinking about, we're talking with Marty, and there's a lot of scripts, that's being revised and adjusted, and they said, well, why? I said, well, I didn't audition for any parts, because during this time too, a lot of emails and a lot of the word was getting out about auditioning for parts and extras and things of that nature. And that's what I told him. I said, well, I didn't audition or anything, but if there's an opening, I still would like to. I said, I would like to be the one to kill the main guy, Bill Hale. And I said, I've seen movies before, I gave him reference, I was like, well, there's this old show called Young Guns. I said in the very first beginning, at the end, the very first Young Guns movie, this guy, he was real afraid of the sheriff. He got killed, and then his last shot he had, I guess he killed the sheriff that he was scared of. So he died happily, you know. That's why I was kind of giving an example. I said, they can blow me up, they can do whatever, you know. I said, but I would want to be the one that done that, you know.
Yeah.
They said, well, we're talking about it. We may put that in there, you know. But yeah, that's just kind of wanted to share that story. But that's kind of what got started. And then, and one of the ladies afterwards, they said, well, if you didn't audition, we would like you to. I said, oh, really? And then they asked me, they said, well, can we take your picture? I said, well, yeah, I guess so, you know. So they did. And then afterwards, they got my information and then kind of just went from there. So emails started and they sent some, I guess, roles to try to play and the scripts that go with it. And this is all new to me, you know. So I respond and I apply and everything that went as far as the audition. And but then it took a lot of time for my work. That was the only thing I think really kept me from doing any more scenes and more with the movie. We had to take our own time off from work, and a lot of the filming was done during the work hours. So it was a lot of 8 hours or more by every day that filming was going on. And of course, some days they moved them to different places, and weather came at different occasions that maybe canceled it. But other than that, they were out there for a period of time.
And a majority of this movie was shot in what location?
It was majority of it was in Fairfax, in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, both Fairfax and Pawhuska, Oklahoma. And I think they did some, I forget where the other places were at, but majority of it was in Oklahoma, in Pawhuska and Fairfax.
Very good. You know, with any motion picture, you know, you sit there and you have a book and then they make a movie out of it. And you hear people say, well, that's not like the book, you know, or the movie is a lot different than the book. In your opinion, how did, I'm guessing you read the book and you've seen the movie.
No, I did not.
No, you did not. Not to put you on the spot there, but so how authentic do you think the movie was in your opinion?
Well, like I said, I did not read the book, and from just hearing from my own relatives, my own family, and everybody says that David, he was pretty on point on his book. With what he wrote in there was really close, and of course the talk was around the communities, a lot of the Osages. Like I said, when obviously I wasn't there during the time, sure. A lot of us weren't, but during that time era, so the stories carry over. It's been talked about. They say, of course, the movie is probably going to be Hollywood-fied. It's going to be Hollywood-upped. Because a story like this is probably, they say, don't want to, you know, make it, you know, just, I don't know what words to use. So it's going to have a Hollywood twist to it. So the gist of the movie, if y'all seen the movie, it kind of captures the gist of what happened, all the horrible things that took place with the Osage people. But for one, they, like I said, it was Hollywood. They turned which two major characters, Lily Gladstone and Leo DiCaprio played, turned it into a love story, and which really wasn't, in a sense, you know, the stories that were said. So that was the Hollywood twist on it, because the story was a lot, how would you say it, a lot worse than what the movie portrayed.
So, getting back to the musical score and the work that you did on this, how were they traditional songs that were utilized, or did you have to work to develop new scores of musical pieces that went with the various scenes? How did you do that?
It was all traditional. We did some recording that was all traditional. The recordings that we did, but Robbie Robinson said that he would add some things to the music to I guess that's what the scoring is. Like I said, this was all new to me, and I didn't know. We'll talk about Robbie a little bit. I didn't know who he was at the time, and everybody was, "Wow, you're working with Robbie Robinson?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Why?" They was like, "Do you know who he is?" And I was like, "No." And they started telling me, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And they were still like, "Wow, you're not excited?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." Because all the music that he produced and all, I guess I'm like a boring person because all the music and things, like even today, I rarely listen to. I don't want to sound any kind of a way, but I really listen to any kind of other music than my own music.
Right.
So, either way, so I was like, yeah, we're working together, him and I, and I'm the music consultant. So everybody was like, man, you're lucky, wow, you're working with Robbie Robinson. And so actually, then afterwards, I went to Florida and went to the Hard Rock Casino, and they had a big old deal of him, and I kind of got excited then. I was like, wow, this guy's like really famous, And but anyway, we're back to working with Robbie. He was telling me, he really talks fast, and he was telling me what we're going to do. And same way he had a lot of questions. Is this appropriate? And I said yes. And do you have a song that would fit this kind of a scene? And I said, yeah, we could do this. Well, how about this? We'd sing, and he was like, yeah, that's perfect. And I can do this and this, to it, and put some background music to it. And so we had a lot of fun, me and Robbie. We got along, and he told me about some other recording artists that he worked with that I knew, indigenous recording artists, and so we had a really, really good time. But all of the songs, like I said, they that I recorded for Robbie and for the movie, they were all traditional songs. They go back to our Ponca people. And in my introduction, my father is Ponca. So a lot of us indigenous people were mixed with a lot of tribes today, where a lot of it wasn't that way. I guess back, probably about 200 years ago, up to about the late 1800s, what they call full bloods. So because of the movement, there's a lot of intermingling, I guess, just with the everyone else. So a lot of people, a lot of different things, So we're a lot of different tribes. And then my mother, she's Osage. So, but our people, the Osage and Ponca people, anthropologists say that we're all one people, along with some other tribes. Back in up to, like I said, about to the removal, about up to the late 1800s. So majority of those songs are Ponca songs. So we the theory is that the Ponca people were keepers of the songs, even though they share them as Ponca and Osages and the other tribes that's involved. They're labeled as Ponca songs. So they're all traditional songs. They have their own stories that's within them that kind of go along with the scenes of the movie.
So how challenging was it to be able to match, these authentic songs with different parts of the movie? Because I'm going to guess that there was you're having to think in your head, hey, do we have something that goes with this, right? How much time did that take you to do that process?
Actually, it wasn't very long because, like I said, our songs, they capture our history. There were some things that were kind of written. I know history says that a lot of us didn't have a written system. But as far as us, we captured a lot of our history in the songs. So they talk about a lot of various of different occasions. I guess today, well, I do kind of listen to some music, and when I do, it's country, believe it or not.
Right.
So I hear country songs, they're talking about their love affairs or missing somebody or something like that. Telling, I guess there's a story within it. And so it's the same way with our Indian music, traditional music. We had the same way. So there was always songs with every occasion. So to answer the question, I guess it was pretty easy. It took maybe some scenes maybe took maybe a little bit of thinking, a little bit of time. But yeah, it was pretty easy. I had to go to my dad a few times to ask him, what you think, kind of just get a second opinion. I kind of was almost unsure on some of them, but I just kind of wanted to make sure. I said, I'm thinking about this one. What do you think? And I'll sing it and we'll talk about it. What the song is talking about, and said, yeah, I fit that, so.
So what is your best memory from working on this film? Because this took place over a period of 3 years that it developed, right?
Yes. Well, it was kind of a recognition of another person, I guess. I also got asked to do. I was a consultant for one of the scenes. The game is called Shinny in our Ponca and Osage people. It's an old game. I guess it could be referred to like field hockey. You may have seen a lot of public schools and a lot of private schools now play. They call it lacrosse. So there's like a lot of indigenous tribes that play. They call it stick game. It's like the lacrosse. And then there's others like where hockey came from, and that's what this version is. It's a ball on the ground, and they fix these sticks like hockey sticks, and it's just pretty much like playing hockey. So we call it shinny. And it's just, I think, just got nicknamed because you get hit a lot in the shins, and you get hit everywhere else. So it's just the English name got labeled shinny.
That's why we call basketball foul.
Right?
Right.
So we were filming this, they asked me to teach all these extra people, and we were filming the scene in Fairfax. And if y'all have seen the movie, I think it's when she comes out of church, Lily Gladstone, and in the background, well, they're seeing her and her sisters are like at a picnic, and Leo is betting on the shinny game, and there's like a shinny game going on in the background. So when we were filming that, we were filming over in Fairfax, and I was standing there, and I forgot all about Leo, and I was standing there right beside him, and he asked me something. I think he asked where I was from. So I told him, and then it kind of just, small talk just started from there. And I asked him the same, and I forget where he was from. I asked him, I said, where were you from, and he told me, and he started asking me, well, what tribe are you, so I told him, and he was kind of really asking questions, and he asked, well, do you go to, they call Native American church or ceremonies? And I was like, yeah, I do, So I kind of shook my interest, so I started telling him about different things. And anyway, we started just talking and come to find out he was real big on environment. I guess a lot of his charity work and stuff he sends to protect the environment. And we were just talking, and then actually we got so wrapped in our conversation, somebody, one of the people on set kind of had like break us up, They were like, we're ready, And then I hear some chatting going on over here, and then a lot of my Osage relatives, they were all just like in a line, and you get the feeling like somebody's staring at you, And so I turn around and then I see them all, and they're really like gasping, and I can hear them talking under their breath. And I hear one of them say, he's talking to Leo, and then it kind of dawned on me, like, oh yeah, I am, because I know about him, and like I said, I don't know, probably a boring person, and I was just like, well, yeah, and I kind of got starstruck there for a little bit, I was like, yeah, I was talking to Leo, but he was just a normal guy, just down to earth, real soft-spoken, but that was probably one of the greatest memories, I guess, first time, I guess, kind of getting starstruck, and didn't know it, because we were just in the conversation, and then everybody was just like, you were standing right beside Leo, and you were talking to him and this and that. But that was a good scene, good time, teaching people how to play shinny. And there was some accidents, I guess. It wasn't bad, but there was some shins that got hit, during the time too. This one gal, I want to say maybe she was Creek, because a lot of Indians from all over came and auditioned and was extras, and so they were in there too. And she got hit pretty good. She got hit on the elbow, and her elbow swelled up real big, had like a big old goose egg. And I'm bad at names, I already forgot your name. I just know you, Mr. President. So I just nicknamed her Elbow, and everybody called her that afterwards, Elbow, get over here, do this or that, and she liked that, and when I knew her face, and next time I seen her, I couldn't remember her name. I was sitting there trying to think. She's like, Elbow. I said, yes, Elbow, So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
The old name recognition. I remember you by this, right? Yeah. Well, I answer to a lot, so it's okay. But a great movie. But let's turn to a little bit of your background. You mentioned that you're a language instructor, and so tell us about what you do and how you're working to preserve the language.
Well, I am not a fluent speaker by all means. I am what they call a beginner level teacher. So the Osage Nation, they started the language program, I want to say back in early to mid 2000s, maybe 2005, somewhere in there. And because beforehand everything was voluntarily as far as language within the communities. And the Osage Nation is a big reservation, and they break them up into districts, which is noticed as towns: Fairfax, Pawhuska, and Hominy. And a lot of the elders and people were voluntarily doing the language. So during that time, I can't remember the exact year, they implemented within the nation's operations of programs, they implemented the language department. So which was a paid positions, which they were able to hire teachers and a director to oversee the department. So like I said, I've been going in on it now, going close to 10 years or so, And the same uncle that asked me to come to speak to these movie people about the music, he was a director at the time, and he's the one that asked me to come work for him for the language department. And so I told him that. I said, Uncle, I don't know the language, you know. And he was like, no, nephew, that's okay. You're going to learn. I said, well, okay, if you want me, I will. And he said, no, that's not what we're looking for. He said, we're looking for young people to come in, to learn it, and to be able to teach it. And so that's how I got in on the language, and still learning. Like I said, by all means, not a fluent speaker. Very beginner level. So like I said, we have beginner level, which usually includes anyone in a beginner level. So it's anywhere from infants clear up to elderly people. And it's kind of like, I guess, in reference to Western education, when you're going to school as kindergarten or something along like that, first thing you learn is ABCs. And then you start learning nouns, verbs, and start formulating sentences. So that's what I do. We have a written system, our own orthography that we have. So we come a long way with the language. We have it in Unicode. So we have it on the World Wide Web, the www in the Unicode. So they have a lot of different languages on keyboards and things that you can look up. And so the Osage language orthography is in that now. So a lot of our people back home, they use it through social medias now. So they message each other. They put it on social media. They put the written language out there. So that's what we teach. We teach that and the written part of it. Then we start going into nouns, verbs, and getting the sentence structure together. So it's backwards from English. We work in a SOV. We always call it SOV structure, which is subject, object, verb. Is how the language is spoken. And I learned that there's only a few languages in the world that operate like English. So a lot of people say English language is one of the hardest languages to learn if it's not your first language. So that's how our language operates. So we have found out a lot of people that don't speak English, they come and they can pick our language up very quickly, I think because of that. But that's what I do. And that's how I got in the language department. Of course, there's an intermediate level, a little bit more advanced, and then there's the advanced level where there's no English spoken at all. That's our three levels that we have up to date as far as the language goes.
All right. So this, if you happen to be at Red Raven basketball games here last week, Oliver and some of his family members were there, and we had a Native American show at halftime, a performance. And your daughter, who actually is in the crowd tonight and plays basketball for us on the women's basketball team, not to single her out or anything. But she also performed at halftime of the event. And one of my board members was just telling me here that he was sitting behind your dad, I believe it was, in the crowd, and your dad got up to speak, and they couldn't get the music to work. And so he turned around and said, hey, do you want to come out here and do this? My board member actually thought your dad was messing with you, that it wasn't serious. And then you hopped up, and some other family members hopped out there and jumped in to save the day on the music. So it was a great performance. And so
thank you. Yes.
So yeah, he thought your dad was really messing with you on that deal. But,
well, I thought he was too as well.
Oh, I can't get the music to work. You're gonna have to get out here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So at this point, is there anything that you want to say more about the movie or your work with the musical score that you want to add in that maybe we haven't already asked about?
No, not really. I told Cam, when she asked me to come up here, I'm better or talking when questions are asked. Because like I said, I think I bore a lot of people sometimes when I just start talking about, and I jump a lot around too, so I don't want to do that either. But
Well, let's shift gears and ask the audience if anybody has any questions for Oliver tonight. Anybody?
yes, I don't teach in the public schools. We have teachers that do that. So we have certified teachers now. I can't remember the year. It's been going on for some time now that we hired our own as certified teachers to go out into public schools. And we got went through the Oklahoma educational system to get accredited as a world language. Now, back in my day of schools, 98 is when I graduated. So I'm not very, very old. And it was called still then, and what they call that? It wasn't world language. When they gave you those subjects, you had to study either French or Spanish, foreign
language.
It's called foreign language during that time. So now it's called, I didn't know that, but it's called world language now. And so we got accredited as a world language. So students, they'll take it in Osage, they call it Osage 1, which is their freshman and junior, or sophomore year, I'm sorry. And then Osage 2 is their junior and senior year. So they can take those and get accredited, and they can also use it towards college credit. And then also, I brought along my daughter, my youngest daughter, and when she was a baby, an infant, she was one of the first babies to get into what we call a immersion school. So we have an immersion school that starts from infancy up to going up to the 8th grade now. It's in Ponca, Oklahoma as well. The public schools are in Fairfax, Ponca, and Hominy. So they'll be immersed in the language at an early age, along with the other credentials of Western educations. And it's kind of replacing, they're used to call Head Start, before like pre-K, kindergarten. So they took the Head Start out and they built a school, immersion school. And so my daughter goes to that, and yes, they have the certified teachers to teach the Osage language in high schools and public schools. It's just the dialects are different. There's the same language. I was going to give a reference to, and I'm not too familiar, I'm just going off what I hear, like in Europe. So you have all these different languages, and they're all so close-knit together. They all sound similar, but some of their dialects are different. That's the same way with us as Osage people. Anthropologists, when they came across us, we call ourselves Dekiha people in our language. Dekiha gets referenced to as people in this region, or people of that land, people of that area. It's kind of what that means in our language. So during the time we were all together, we were way out east, up towards Niagara Falls and up in New York area today. And so the encroachment of civilization forced us to go westward. And during the time, if you ever heard of the Cohikian Mound era, Osages were heavily involved during that time era. Have you ever seen the movie, was it Apocalypto? What's his name? He produced that movie. He used to play in that movie, Lethal Weapon. Mel Gibson, he produced that movie. In that movie, there was a city of the Mayan and Aztec people in that movie. It was just a whole operating city. It was the same way during that time era. It was around St. Louis era or St. Louis area when this took place. So it was like a major trade city. A lot of tribes would come there to trade goods. And so a lot of French people were heavily involved. They were called fur traders. And that's where our theory is, that's where some of our dialect got changed as well, has French influence in it. And also then I realized too, with the language, is Osage actually came from a French name. So French people were trying to capture and write out Wajaji. And in Osage, what we're identified as Osage, Wajaji in our people is actually like a clan. It's just a group of people. And that's how they encountered us. They labeled us all Wajajis. And in the movie, it's called Neoganshka, as who we are identified as. And that just refers to as people of the middle waters. So where we camped, where we were at, we're surrounded by these different waters. I think one major one is the Missouri during that time era. And so French were trying to capture that, write that, and I guess in the French language. So phonetically, writing out Wajaji would be spelled like W-A-H maybe, then Z-H-A, so for the wa and the ja, and then the Z-H-E for the G. So they were trying to write that, and I guess in French, wa is spelled with an O. And then the ja was their S and the A, and their G was a G and a E, which now got translated to Osage in the English language. So that word came from French people during that time. So which we're all now known as Osage. So but back home we refer to ourselves as Wajaji or Neoganshka, children of the middle waters. I probably went off somewhere. Did I answer a question or?
No, that's very interesting, actually. That's great information.
I'm here all night, I guess. We're here all night? No. Now, they kind of really focused, and a lot of this really happened, majority of it, in the Fairfax area. So I think Martin Scorsese wanted to kind of make the focus there. But yeah, the Drummonds' name was not mentioned during the movie, but they were a major factor to a lot of the land loss. Speaking with a lot of my own relatives, and I think the movie kind of portrayed that everyone was involved in these murders. And anyone that was trying to do justice or that wasn't a part of it, they were killed, which the movie, displayed. So it could be, I'll just use the terms non-Indian or white people. They even killed their own. That I think in the movie, I forget the gentleman's name, that they sent a representative to Washington. They sent word up there, a telegram, and they killed him. So anybody that was involved trying to solve these murders were killed. But the Drummonds were a major part of taking the land, just like with the movie. They were marrying these Osages and just killing them for the head rights, what they call head rights, the oral rights, and to take over the land. And it still goes on today. I was telling one of she's my aunt, and she's a language teacher as well. And I was telling her about what I was going to do. And I was telling her, I said, I'm coming up there to Kansas. My daughter goes to school, and they're going to ask some questions. And anyway, and then we started visiting. And she was telling me that. And that's what we were talking about. She was talking about the Drummonds. She was like, the Drummonds were really, because where we're from Hominy on my mother's side, what we call districts. They're just like camps, I guess. So there's some Osages. We're all Osages, but we kind of like villages, I guess. So my mother was from Hominy, and that's where my aunt is from. And that's where a lot of the Drummonds came from, was the Hominy area. They weren't so much over in the Fairfax area. And she was telling me this, my aunt. She said, yeah, they were a major part of that. They were telling these Indians. So she said during this time, the 20s, 30s, up to the 40s, the Great Depression era. She said, so all these Indians were rich when everybody else was poor. And so we talked about what the movie displayed and talked about. And she said it was the same thing with land. She said that they knew that, and they would come when maybe they were needing something, or they would just talk them out of it, out of their land, saying they didn't need that much land, and getting it very, very, very cheap. And she said, we went around that, she was telling me just all kinds of stories about how people were they were buying out the land, the Drummonds. And she said, and it's that way today. She said, nephew, I forget his name. Like I said, I'm not too involved in any of that. But she has head rights, and she said his name, she said, I can call him right now, and he would or message him, and she said that he would call me right back. And anybody else, you have to make like an appointment or something, she said, because I guess she still owns a lot of land that he's wanting from her. And I guess just always bugging her about her land. So she's like, if I ever ran into emergency, if I ever needed money, I could sell that land very easily to him. But yeah, that's how they attain a lot of the acreages, and a lot of it's outrageous. In Osage Reservation, it's a large reservation. They do have a lot of land. I think they have a horse ranch. They own quite a bit. And that's the reason of that. They obtain a lot of, kind of swindle a lot of the people out of their land. And I guess from that, they got a lot of wealth from that. And I didn't know about her show. I think she has a show too. And then I didn't even know what that mercantile was when it came into town. Like I said, I just stayed to myself. I'm not involved in any of that, and I didn't know anything about her, and still don't, So, but yes, I hope I answered that question. But yes, they own a lot of land, and that's how they, yes, they were a major part of that time too.
Other questions?
Yeah and no. There's not just one, but yeah, I have some favorite songs. Um, is this being filmed or anything?
Yes.
No. Well, we have a lot of good relations because during the time too, a lot of these songs they reference to a lot of our history, and today we have our Osage ceremonial dances that we still have every June, the month of June. Um, it's the whole month, and there's one weekend break in there, so we dance from Thursday to Sunday, and it gives us a chance to be who we are, and we utilize these songs, and so it's just a small glimpse of what we actually used to do when we were all together. And so a lot of it's just kind of capturing the warlike and with other tribes. So that's why I was kind of asking, are we getting filmed? But with everybody tribes, they know that. They have songs about us too. But so that's kind of like a lot of the songs are referring to is the warlike. Taken down, I guess to be like in reference to military today, you had different elite groups of warriors, and you had certain leaders. So a lot of the songs talk about the warfare, um, defeating their war party or defeating their war chief, the main guy and things like that. That's kind of what it kind of to talk about, I guess, as English translation. But yeah, it gives us a chance to utilize those songs and to be who we are. And I guess one song, just the top of my head, I guess, is when the momentum builds. It's kind of like a reenactment when we do this dance of the warfare. So there's preparations. So when you prepare for that, there's these types of songs that is kind of getting you prepared. And when the songs change momentum and the beat picks up, and when the reenactment like of the war, then after it's all over with, coming back, there's songs for that. Maybe some are wounded, some may have lost their lives and things like that. So kind of like a memorial type of songs. But anyway, so one of them are kind of a up-tempoed kind of a song. Like I said, it's just right off the top of my head, and it's real simple. It just goes like, no bombe, no bombe, no bombe, no bombe, no bombe, no bombe, Georgia, no bombe. And it just kind of repeats. So it's kind of the tune, the melody of that song, and all it's saying, I guess, English translation is, I'm not afraid of you, and it's referring to the Sioux tribe of today. Referring to one of the war leaders, I guess. Of course, there's taunting and things going on, and so that's what that song talks about. It's telling them, like, well, come on, I'm not afraid of you. But yes, those are kind of like one of my favorites, and we usually Saturday night, I guess, is like the Saturday night disco or something. So that's when everybody kind of gets with it. That's kind of our peak when we start singing those types of songs. So that's when I guess they turn into like this bunch of wild Indians, I guess. So everybody just like going for it, really dancing and get with it. So yeah, there's a lot of favorite ones like that.
Other questions? They're they're at all three districts: Pawhuska, Hominy, and Fairfax, or Gray Horse. We call it Gray Horse, Fairfax. Um,
They're all kind of depend. It's throughout the month of June. Typically, the order's been going Gray Horse first, which is in Fairfax, and then Hominy, and then last would be Pawhuska. Is I would probably think so. I think they probably would. The town Chamber of Commerce. Everybody knows when the dances are. The town people. Probably your best bet. You can just call the Osage Nation. I would say that it is a public event, but they're very strict on no pictures or video during the process of the dancing. Other than that, people's camps, there's an arena, what we call arena, where they dance. During that time while they're dancing, because they all have people go around too. So if they see you, to just save embarrassment, they'll ask you not to film or take pictures if they've seen anybody with their phone out or any cameras. But pictures are welcome. Outside of that, when people are getting dressed or undressed, you can go up to some camps and people and ask to take pictures and things. So just kind of want to mention that, kind of pre-warn, I guess. But it is open. It is a public event. People can come. So we're open. We're loving and caring. We like to eat. They like to eat. They're constantly. We just eat and dance during that time. So they have like big feast. Authentic kind of Indian food, indigenous food. It does get hot, of course, during that month of June. So they have buildings and have cooling stations and things like that too. So, but yes, they have them during those time of June and then at those districts. So yes, you could probably just call the Osage Nation. We have our own website, and it's probably be posted there as well. It's just www.osagenation. You can just find all your information there.
So how big are these events? Like how many people are showing up to one of these dances?
Well, there's quite a few. A lot of the dancers, as far as dancers, there's probably Saturday night, like I said, is probably your biggest night where everybody shows up. Thursday, some people still have to work. We have 7 sessions. Thursday afternoon typically starts around 2, 3 o'clock afternoon and wraps up about 5 o'clock. And during that time, they'll feed about 5:30, somewhere around in there. And after everybody eats, they like to rest, digest, I guess. And they will resume the evening portion at about 8 p.m. to about 10 p.m. They wrap up. So they do that Thursday afternoon, Thursday night, Friday afternoon, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. And then Sunday is just one session. They typically start Sunday a little earlier, about 1, and usually wrap up about 8 o'clock that evening. There's no break during that time, no supper break. And what was your question?
Just how many people?
Oh, how many people? That's right.
Are we
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
1,000 people?
That's what I was getting at. So the people, dancers from each district Saturday night, there's quite a few. I would probably just guess few hundred dancers, and people probably the same. So there's probably, I don't know, you could probably round up to maybe about 1,000 people or so on a Saturday night. It gets pretty packed. Yeah. And there's really no like designated parking and things like that. So we don't have like no, what's that big place down there or Oklahoma City Thunder plays, we don't have anything like that.
Right,
so
yeah.
There's just little areas where they can park, and you just got to find a place to park.
Gotcha. Any other questions?
Did you have a question? Someone over here, I was seeing, raised a hand. No? Yes, there's still quite a bit. Um, we did some land buyback. We also did that some years back. In doing so, we created a buffalo ranch. So we have our own. I forget how many acres. There's quite a few. So we have our own. We raise our own buffalo, and then we created a few years back a butchering house. Because beforehand, when people would hunt like deer and things, we would have to take them to the town butcher place, the process place, meat place, if they didn't do it on their own. And so we have our own now as the Osage Nation, and that's located in Hominy as well. So we process our meats and the hides and everything that go along with the buffalo, and also the venison too, deer. But mainly we focus on the buffalo. So we have our own buffalo ranch, which came back from the buyback land. That's how we attained that. So there is still quite a bit of land that we still do own. A lot of it is through families. They own their land, and they still own their head rights. So they get their oil rights. It's just kind of like a per capita. Usually every quarter they get their monies from the oil that is sold. So it gets inherited, just like the movie. So who the eldest is in the family has the head rights. So it gets passed down next one in line as they pass away. So that was the purpose of them doing all these murders. So they would marry into the family to get the legal rights, to get the head rights, and they would kill them off to obtain the money and the land.
Other questions? All right. If not, thank you so much for being here tonight. You're very interesting, and you're famous to us, and you're famous for this movie and all the work that you did.
I was asking somebody about what would you think, and they had all kinds of stories about the whole deal during the movie. And the exciting thing for me is it gave me an opportunity to go to places where I probably never thought I would go. The first one was New York. Apple, they paid for everything. They paid for airfare, room, and got to walk the red carpet, And like I said, I don't know, because maybe that's a good thing, If I was like, are you nervous? I was like, no, am I supposed to be, But now looking, reflecting back, it's kind of like, it is a big deal, I'm like, wow, I would never have thought, I would do anything like that. And it was very kind of a cultural shock too. And it's a nice experience and a nice memory, I guess what I'm trying to say is because, I never would have thought I would go to a place like that. And like I said, very, very different. When I was there in New York, we stayed I don't even know what the place was called. It was real fancy, real nice. Everything was just real beautiful. And I was teasing my wife. We went in, checked the room, and I was like, "Hey, you got a stall? Or you got a toilet too?" And they had like 2 toilets, I guess. One was, I guess, to clean you. I guess I didn't know this. I was like, we could go to the bathroom together. It was like. So it's real fancy, real nice,
I'm sure she's excited that you're telling that story.
We should try it, she didn't want to do it. So, but things like that, it was really nice. And then the red carpet, it was nice. And it's the same way. They had all these people when we got through the red carpet, walked in, and they had signs up. They were all from all different places around the world. And like French, Japan, they had Australia, it had like all these different places, I guess, people were interviewing you, and so they were asking me to come over, you know. And so I'll go there and same way, kind of like this, you know, answer some questions. And yeah, I got to meet a lot of people around the world there, you know, at New York. And of course, then she wanted to go all these places I didn't even know about, you know, go to this park and other buildings in different places, you know. And to me, you know, I'm just like back home, I guess, very country-like, I guess, where we lived. You know, we live kind of, you know, out in the country. There's nobody around, you know, so like all my friends and people I talk to are either our garden or our dogs or horses, you know, things like that, you know. So anyway, so I come out and I like smoke sometimes. So I'm like, I guess called like a tailor-made. So like we have our own like traditional tobaccos and things. So one morning when they out had breakfast, and the breakfast was something else too. I didn't know it. She's like, "Hey, what you want for breakfast?" I don't know, you know. Do we have sausage? We have eggs, you know, this and that. And we ordered. Or I was like, "Well, I'm kind of hungry. Well, get me two," because they had like labeled one or two, and it was all paid for as well. I said, "Well, might as well, you know, we'll eat." Anyway, they brought them. I guess there were like bundles of this, so we had like all this food, you know, and of course we didn't eat it all. And so, you know, I got full. So I'm gonna go downstairs in the morning, you know, I'm gonna go have a smoke, you know, and we're sitting out there. People walk by, like everybody was in a hurry. So I like to tease too. So I was like, you know, Hawaii, Dahe, you know, or you know, Aeoni. I was like trying to talk Indian to him, you know. I know they don't know what I'm saying, you know, but and then nobody would respond. I was like, why ain't nobody wants to be teased or something? So I was like, hello, how you doing? You know, nobody would say nothing. Everybody was in a hurry, you know, and I tried to open the door for somebody, and they kind of like try to run away from me too. Like, why are you holding the door open for me? You know. I was telling this to someone there. They were one of the Apple people, and they was like, "Yeah, they probably think you're going to pickpocket them." I was like, "What?" You know, and it was like, "Yeah, people they're just in a rush. People don't really talk to people, you know, unless it's something you know kind of formal like this, but just every day, you know." Wow, you know, it's okay. That was like a big cultural shock to me. And then another story, not the movie premiere, but I had to go up there again. So I thought I was kind of prepared, but I had to drive this time. So I guess it's true. People say if you ever drive in New York, you become a New Yorker really fast, you know. So I know what the horn's for. I was honking the horn. I was hollering, you know, I was doing all that. So yeah, it was a very nice experience. Then I went to LA, it was the same way. Went way on the other side, and it was kind of more laid back, I guess. People kind of did say hello, you know, to you out on the busy streets. It's busy as well, but wasn't as busy as New York. Like in New York, people were just like on top of each other. Buildings were on top of each other. Everything's just like a one-way traffic. You know, where we were at looked like we could walk there. It just took forever to get there because of traffic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like around here, you know, when you can be to work in 5 minutes. You know, it's not that way in New York, right? So, well, if there's no other questions, we're just so happy that we were able to have you come up tonight. And
Thank you.
And I don't know if it's because your daughter's here or not, but it gives you a chance to connect with her while you're here. So, but again, thank you so much for participating in Raven Talk tonight.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.